Blog Talk Radio.
Hello, everyone. This is Lori Smith on Blog Talk Radio. This is Child Abuse Prevention and Human Rights Abuse Prevention as to us. It is Friday night, 9:30 p.m., March 26th, and I'm happy to be here. We're on for half an hour tonight, and we're going to continue on with the Survivor to Thriver workbook found on www.ascasupport.org. It's a great workbook, 115 pages long. We're on page 75, and so it's quite intensive, but I find it's very good for people who have survived child abuse. I know myself, I'm getting a lot out of it, and so I think it's quite helpful. And the ASCA Adult Survivors of Child Abuse is an organization that, it's a Morris Center program, and they have in certain cities, host cities, they actually have meetings that you can attend and become a part of, really to help walk through your journey. Or I could join up and become part of the group and really experience some real healing and reach out to people, and so it's a great, I think it's a great organization. And it's I don't happen to have one in my city, but they have online support groups as well, web-based support groups, online support groups and stuff. So you can check out their website at www.ascasupport.org, and you can pull up this workbook if you wanted to go through it, reading while I'm reading through it. You can pull that workbook up. It's the Survivor to Thriver workbook, and you can just follow right along with me. We're on step 4, page 75, and it's a huge workbook. The first 34 pages are safety first, and they just really want to make sure everybody is in a safe place before they even start doing this workbook. And so we already covered all that already, but it's so important, to know where you're at in your healing and to know whether or not you should, progress further. And, you want to be in a safe place because you don't want to regress in your healing. That's what they really are specify there, is that it's so important that we know where we're at in our healing when we're doing the workbook, and also that we have somebody to do it with us, to do this workbook with, and that way we're not on our own trying to deal with these feelings and emotions that come up from past abuse. And so it's so important to have someone with you. And like, I know myself, I'm okay to do the workbook by myself, but I'm far enough along in my healing process that I can do that, but some people might not be able to. So that's why it's so important that the show could trigger you, so not to listen to it if you think that it might. You can always come back and catch the archive another time, or you can just go right to the website and pull the workbook up yourself. And it's just important to be safe. And this is not a professional show. I don't hold any professional counseling certificates or any therapist certificates. I'm just a person who sits on Blog Talk Radio, just bringing information to people that I find is very helpful for myself, and that's good information. And I just think abuse is not talked about enough, any kind of abuse, and whether it's child abuse, domestic violence and abuse, sexual abuse, just the whole thing. It's just so pushed under the carpet, and that's why I'm one more voice. I just want to be one more voice to add to all the other voices out there that have been out there for years already, talking about it and saying, look, we've got to stop abuse. We have to stop child abuse. We have to stop domestic violence and domestic abuse. We have to stop sexual abuse. It has to stop. And so it's going to be up to all of us to make that change. And everyone's going to have to get involved if we're really going to see any change. The abusers are going to have to stop abusing, and the people who are being abused are going to need to get help. And it's just a huge, huge issue. And with the way things are, it's kind of on the rise. It's escalating. It might be just that more people are reporting it, which is great, and or it's just that it's on the rise. But they have done the stats, and they know that it's on the rise, of child abuse especially, and they really kind of blame the economy for that, and people are stressed out and take their stress out on their children and their families. But this has been going on since time began. And so I just want to be one more voice out there just to say we have to look at what's wrong and we have to fix it. But right now we're studying on, we're looking at the Survivor to Thriver workbook. So if you're a young person under the age of 18, you might want to have someone listen to this with you, and especially younger, I fight for child rights. I stand up for child rights. I believe in child online safety. And it's all about protecting children. So you would be doing yourself a favor and myself a favor if you would make sure that you have an adult with you when you listen to the show, someone who is, a mentor. I know sometimes we don't have parents who can do that for us, and who will be there for us to listen to what we're listening to. If you have a teacher, a counselor at school, someone like a mentor, a coach, who can sit and listen to this with you and make a good call and say, well, whether you should be listening to it or not. So important, right? And we're going to be doing some online safety. I'm going to actually be covering some of that. So important. And yeah, we just can't stress it enough. You have to be safe, and so you want to make sure that it's okay for you to listen to this show. The topics of abuse are very sensitive, especially what we're going to be covering here tonight in the Step 4 on the Survivor to Thriver workbook, and it's quite scary, for most people. If they haven't heard a lot about abuse, it can be very scary. And then you might have questions. You might have that you just can't figure out where to get the information. So that's why I say it's good to have someone who's older who can listen to it with you, and they can help you find the answers that you need. So important. So we have about 20 minutes left, and we'll just get right on with this. Step 4 is called I Shall Re-Experience Each Set of Memories of the Abuse as They Surface in Mind. And so you can imagine this actual part of the workbook is pretty heavy duty. And if you get to this point, in the workbook and you're working through it, this is where the action starts happening, where you actually have to start recalling memories and re-experiencing each set of memories of the abuse as it surfaces in your mind. And this is part of the healing process. It's part of the technique of recognizing the abuse and allowing it to yourself to work through it. So it's so important. And that's why I say, if you're a survivor of child abuse, you want to make sure that you're in a safe enough place in your healing, far enough along that you can actually go through this part of the workbook with us here. Otherwise, please just turn the show off and you can listen at it another time, because it's so important. Your safety is like number one. And that's the whole thing with, I like the ASCA, the Adult Survivors of Child Abuse, because they are so big on safety first and making sure everybody's in the right place before they start the workbook. And there's a whole section, that 34 pages, the very first chapter, Safety First, which covers that and says, there's a little, a set of questions that you can answer just to make sure that you are safe to be listening to this and far enough along in your healing that you can actually listen to it. So, listen at your own discretion, please. Make the right decision for yourself. So, Step 4, I shall re-experience each set of memories of the abuse as they surface in mind. And I'll read right from the page, and I might add some stuff. I actually did this show the other night, Wednesday night, and it only taped for about 5 minutes, and then it was gone, and I actually did the whole thing. So, I'm going to redo it because it's so important. This step represents the major task of the first stage of recovery and may require the most time to accomplish. Often, survivors of extreme and prolonged abuse will need to return to this step again and again as new recollections of the same or additional episodes of abuse surface. This step involves going through the memories of your abuse and expressing them at ASCA meetings to trusted friends or supporters or your therapist in as much detail as you can remember, and to the extent appropriate for your listeners. If at all possible, we encourage you to find a therapist before beginning work on this step. If this is not possible, this is the time to strengthen your support network and continue your participation in ASCA. If I was attending the ASCA support groups, this would be the time to really get that network, that support network built before I would start going on with this part of Survivor to Thriver workbook. And so important, right? We got to have that support in our lives. We need to reach out and find people who really are backing us. And, whether it's a good counselor, a therapist, or just a really good friend who's been there all along saying, you know what, you can do this and I want to help you. Wouldn't that be great, if we all had a friend like that who would step in and say, look, I'm here with you every step of the way. I just want you to be well and I want you to be whole and healthy and happy and to get over the trauma of abuse and being abused. People, if they haven't experienced child abuse, they don't know what it's like to live as an adult survivor of child abuse, and it's not their fault. They can't. You can't. How can you put yourself in someone else's shoes unless you've actually experienced it? And so, it takes somebody with a lot of compassion and a lot of empathy. Not sympathy, but empathy, to be able to say, look, I know you're suffering and I really want to help you and we can do this together. And everybody needs a friend like that. And I know myself, I try to be that person for other people. And if I can do anything for you, get a hold of me on Blog Talk Radio. You can get a hold of me on Facebook. Because I know, I spent years and years on my own dealing with this stuff on my own because I didn't trust anybody. And I did talk to a few people, but most of those people left my life as fast as they kind of came in, and some stuck around for a while and then thought that I was just too wounded or too damaged and I needed to get professional help, which they were probably right. And they just couldn't be that person for me to say, look, I'll help you until you get professional help. Then you get professional help, and I'll still help you. That's a real friend who sticks by you, right? So you want to have good people in your life and not be around people who are going to drag you down. You want to find somebody in your life who, reach out to people. That's what happened to me. 5-6 months ago, I started reaching out. And as soon as I reached out my hands, all these hands came back to me, and I couldn't believe it. And I thank you all. Most of you guys listen to my shows. I've got friends in Australia, friends in the UK, friends in the United States, all over the United States, and in Canada. And I just thank you so much, because you are such a huge part of the reason why I feel as good as I do today. So I thank you so much. And so I'll just keep reading here. Re-experiencing the abuse comprises many things. First, you will need to allow yourself to re-experience the various feelings, express them as they arise, and eventually be able to label them so they do not confuse and overwhelm you. Second, you need to try to describe any sensory impressions connected to the abuse, like visual images, sounds, smells, tastes, and tactile sensations. Third, you will need to recall your thoughts about the abuse, both during and after each episode. And some of this is pretty detailed, pretty graphic, and some parts of it I'm actually not going to read out on the air, because I think it's very sensitive, and we could have young people listening on the show. So you have to go, and if you want to, really read through some of it, just go right to the website, www.ascasupport.org, and you can read that for yourself. I'm just not going to read it on the air, but I'll read some of it. It says, try to notice if you have any body memories of the abuse while you are re-experiencing it. Body memories include aches, pains, numbing, or other physical sensations that appear suddenly in key locations of your body, such as your arms, suggesting you were hurt while trying to ward off blows, and the face and the mouth, which, you may have been injured when you were slapped, gagged, or forced to just abused, right? These body sensations mean something. By allowing yourself to re-experience them, you will help to discharge them, and thus allow them to gradually fade away. And I have body memories, for sure I do, from the physical abuse that I suffered, and some of the sexual abuse that I suffered as well. So, I know that they can happen, and you do, we have these memories, right? And so we have to actually acknowledge them, and by allowing ourselves to re-experience them, we will help to discharge them and thus allow them to gradually fade away, they said. So, I think that's a great idea. Finally, try to remember what behaviors you engaged in during and after the abuse, right? Did you try to run away and hide, roll up into a ball to protect yourself, or fight back and scream? Or were you immobilized and unable to move while the abuse occurred? What about later? Did you run out of the house, crawl under the bed, hide in a closet, things like that? And I can remember all of that stuff. I know exactly what I was doing, before, during, and after the abuse, right? So I totally know, I can picture the whole thing kind of replays in my mind over the years, the many years that I grew up in the home there, being abused by my mother mainly, but some from my father too. My mom and dad, right? So hard, right? When you look at that and you think, yeah, what did I used to do? Did I used to run away? Did I used to hide, roll up into a ball to protect myself? Did I scream? It kind of allows us to, to actually, first of all, to validate the whole thing, right? Especially if you were abused as a young child, and then now you're an older adult, right? And you can kind of work through it and realize, we've come through the worst of it, because first of all, we survived the abuse, which is great. And then now all we have to do is put it in its place. And with the help of a good therapist and a counselor, I think that's very possible. And for me, even just doing these blog talk shows really helps me out. But I would like to have a therapist as well, probably down the road. I just can't afford one right now. But, at some point it would be nice to just talk to a therapist and, just to find out really how they can help you. You know what I mean? It's such a good idea just to reach out to people. I think that's just the whole thing. Just keep reaching out until you find someone who you relate with, and they understand what you're talking about. They understand where you've been, and even if they haven't been there themselves, they understand the pain that you're going through, because they've studied up on it, and they really want to help. I think that's just awesome, right? And then they said, this step likely will be very difficult to achieve, because it means returning in your mind to the scene of the crime. But this time you can have all of the control you need. The experience will not be as painful or scary as when you were a child, right? Remembering that you are dealing with memories, not present reality. Because, we're just dealing with memories now, not the present reality, right? as an adult survivor of child abuse, right? We've experienced the worst of it, so now we're just dealing with the memories. And of course, it's very painful. And I know because I've spent years and years in my own pain, thinking, how can I get rid of this pain? And, I just thought there was no way that I would ever be able to release the pain, and I just thought I'd live for the rest of my life like that. And I'm so glad to say that, a lot of it has been placed where it should be, and it's gone. And just even about 3 years ago, that was not the case for me. So it can happen, and that's why I say just keep reaching out and just keep going. One day it's going to happen for you, and I know because it happened for me, so I know it can happen. And I've talked to other survivors too, and they say the same thing. You just have to keep going, and you just have to keep putting one foot in front of the other, and eventually you're going to run into the right person, you're going to talk to the right person, you're going to come in contact with the right person who can really help you work through this stuff, and you won't be on your own, because I think it's just so sad to be suffering in silence by yourself. That's what I was doing, and I was just in my own pit of despair all the time, and I did good at work, I'd be fine as long as I was busy at work and stuff, but I'd get home on my own, and that's when all the problems with my own feelings inside, internalized, would start, and I'd just sit around in my own little pity party all the time, and it was just not a healthy lifestyle, and so I wasn't making friends, I wasn't doing anything proactive, I was just sitting around being depressed, and I wish I would have reached out and got help like a long time ago, right? I really do. It says, move slowly, step by step, memory by memory, so that you can manage the feelings and share your reactions with your therapist and trusted members of your support system. Because I guess, if we move slowly, step by step, then we're not trying to rush through it, and then we can allow it to take the time that it needs to take to come out and to be put where it needs to be put. You know what I mean? It's really, that's what they stress here with this ASCA, and that's why I like this program here, this ASCA, the Morris Center program, because they really stress that, it's really we have to move at our own pace, and you have to know what pace is right for yourself. And if you feel like you're moving too fast, then you need to let your therapist know. And we'll go on with that because they actually talk about this. They have two sections. There's a self-help section, their recommendations for self-help, and then they have the professional help recommendations. So we'll read the self-help recommendations first. We have about 14 minutes left. Record in your journal each episode of abuse that you recount in ASCA meetings or in your therapy. Describe your story in your own words or in the way you have heard other survivors share their stories. Just be sure that the experiences you recount are yours and not someone else's. Draw pictures to accompany the words and to create a fuller image of the surroundings. Include as much detail and emotional expression as you feel comfortable with. And writing and drawing in story form is helpful in organizing and integrating the past experience for you in a different manner, one that takes into account your adult perspective and knowledge. Try to sort out exactly what happened and your reactions then as well as now. Your goal is to develop a more complete understanding of the abuse episodes, and one that incorporates the roles played by your parents, your abusers, your family, the forces over which you had no control. And then they said here, step number 2 for self-help, you really need to take good care of yourself while working this step because re-experiencing your memories can be very exhausting. Try to incorporate exercise, plenty of sleep, stress management techniques, meditation, maybe even some high-dose vitamin therapy in your daily routine. All of these things can help your body and spirit stay healthy and vigorous while you work through your memories. Yeah, it's so important to take care of ourselves. If we weren't shown a good example of how to take care of ourselves as children and being abused, as a child, you really have to work double extra hard to take care of ourselves, right? We do. And it's hard, but we can do it. And so we just have to really learn how to work these things into our life, getting plenty of sleep, stress management techniques like they just suggest here, meditation, some vitamins, eating properly, just things like that, right? And, if we didn't grow up, with a good example of that, it is hard because you have to teach yourself and train yourself to do these things, right? And they said here, if you tire of writing, try tape recording your memories and listening to them a few weeks later. You may choose or not to add new segments at the end of the tape. Listening again to these tapes several months later may be especially eye-opening because it may both confirm your progress in remembering and trigger new memories. And then they said, what about that group that you were going to join? By step 4, a support group may prove to be an invaluable source of support and encouragement for your efforts. Recovery is usually faster and safer if you don't do it alone. And you need people more than you might think. And that's so true, right? I mean, that's what I keep saying. I wish I would have reached out a long time ago. I just didn't trust people, and I'd meet people, a couple of people in my lifetime that I thought I could trust, and I did trust. And would open up to them. And then, of course, so many years later, they're out of my life. And, I mean, I can't blame them. But it's just that, then you think, oh, man, I can't really trust anybody. I'll just keep this stuff to myself. And that's just a sad way to be. Because in order to heal, really, it's very healing to belong to a support group. I know I belong to a couple, and it's so nice to have that support. People that understand where you're coming from, even if they didn't experience the same kind of abuse or the same, the duration or the same severity of abuse. They know what it's like to be in pain, and they know what it's like to hurt, and to be just really suffering through life, and they're generally looking to live a healthy life too, and so they just want everybody else to be healthy too, and happy and whole in their lives. So it's always so good to have that support. And I know once I started reaching out and joining some of these groups and meeting these wonderful people, my life changed. I mean, it really did. I can't. It's hard for me to explain it. What it was from 6 months ago to now. Even I was still doing quite well 6 months ago, but the thing is I wasn't doing as well as I am now. So that just tells you what a support group can do, to have people in your life. I mean, I didn't have anybody in my life that actually cared, and really, honestly, my family obviously cares. The remaining members. There's not very many of us left now, but they don't. There's no way to connect with them on the abuse, because we all were subjected to different kinds of abuse, right? So my mom didn't treat us all the same way, and my dad didn't treat us all the same way. So the siblings that are left, experienced a whole different lifestyle. So we can't connect on that level. So we can't heal together as a family, right? And we could with professional help, I believe, but I don't think any of my family members are willing to go get professional help with me as a family. So, I mean, I'm on my own in this. You know what I mean? But that's what I found out, is that I'm not on my own. I used to think, actually, I shouldn't say that, because I used to think like that. I'm on my own, and because I was for so many years. And now I'm like, man, even though in my own family situation I'm on my own, I'm not on my own as far as the whole group support thing goes, because I've got so many people backing me up. It's just amazing. So that's why I say just keep reaching out, because you will find that group and you'll find that support, but you have to keep reaching out or it won't happen, right? And so we'll just go on to the professional part. In your work with your therapist, explore your reactions to talking about the abuse. How do you find yourself expecting your therapist to react? And how do you feel after disclosing especially personal segments of your story? Do you feel less ashamed of what happened now that you have shared it with someone else? Are you able to talk more easily with other people about your abuse and your work in recovery? And then they also list here number 2, remember again that you have the right to control the pace of your therapy. At times, you and your therapist may disagree on the best pace for your particular stage of recovery, and at times you may want to go faster while he or she thinks you should slow down. Other times, she or he may want to push you to deal with something if they think it would benefit you, right? Ultimately, you must take an active role in setting the pace of your recovery, settling on one that is comfortable but not stagnant. So, I guess they really push that we have the right to control the pace of our therapy, and if we're uncomfortable with something, then we need to make sure that our therapist or counselor knows, and that they know exactly how we're feeling, and that they might want to say, oh no, I think you should slow down, or I think you should move a little faster. But then you have the ultimate control on the pace of your therapy, and you can explain to them why. You know what I mean? And I think that's so important, right? We have to, if you were abused as a child, you're, manipulated probably, and not good at making decisions for yourself, obviously, because there was no control. And so as an adult, we have human rights. We have a right to a good life. We have a right to get the help that we need, and we have a right to say what pace is good for us and what pace is not, We have rights, and so we have to stand up for those rights and stand up for ourselves, but we have to do a lot of inside searching for that, to find out what is good for us. And I think that's a big part of it. It's like we have to really be thinking about that stuff, because, we have to make sure that we're getting the right help and moving at the pace that we need to, so that we don't go too fast and end up regressing, or go too slow and not get anywhere, right? Like, that's the thing. There has to be a point where it's just right, and so, or at least close to it. So I totally agree with that, and I think that's awesome. So that was step 4. Now there's step 5, and we can just start it. We have just about 5 minutes left. Step 5, we'll just take a quick look at it. I accept that I was powerless over my abuser's actions, which holds them responsible. And I think this is such an important topic here. This is an important part of this Survivor to Thriver workbook. It's on page 77 called Step 5. I accept that I was powerless over my abuser's actions, which holds them responsible. The abusers are always responsible for their behavior, whether it's a parent, a caregiver, someone in the family, a sibling, or it doesn't matter who it is. The abuser is at fault. You cannot blame a child for child abuse. There's no excuse for child abuse. There's no reason for it except for the abuser is responsible and at fault. So this chapter is so important because I know I grew up being, I was physically and verbally and emotionally and psychologically and sexually abused. So over the period of many years, and it had its toll on me. It took its toll on me, and I believed I didn't believe that I'd caused the abuse or that I was responsible for it, but I believed what they told me, that I was worthless, useless. I had a low self-esteem. I really had a problem with self-loathing. I didn't like my body. I was very much at wanting to get out of my skin all the time. I was not comfortable in my own skin. I was not comfortable sitting around in a room by myself. Actually, I was not comfortable sitting around anywhere. I just wasn't comfortable, period. I couldn't get comfortable sitting anywhere for years and years and years. And, maybe this last few years, I've actually started to learn how to be comfortable being in my own skin and just being my own, who I am, But it did take me a long time, and it doesn't have to, because if we reach out and get that professional help, the therapist or a counselor who can really work with this, and a support group. I think, a little bit of all of it's good. Finding a good friend, finding a support group, finding a therapist. Why not have all three? That way you have a mixture of people in your life who can bring some good positive stuff to you, because that's such a huge topic. It says, by now you know that survivors grow up believing the classic myth of child abuse, that they, not their parents or abusers, were somehow responsible for the abuse. The justifications for this myth are as varied as your imagination is fertile. I let him do it to me. I should have been able to protect myself. I liked certain aspects of the abuse. This is stuff that abused children might think later on as adults, or young adults even, or later as adult survivors, right? They might think that they were responsible. It says here the child's often distorted perceptions of who was responsible are enhanced by the parents' or abusers' indictments, like, I'm beating you because you are a bad boy, or I am showing you how much I love you. I wouldn't be calling you stupid if you showed me you have more than half a brain in that head of yours. These are things that abusers would say to their children or caregivers or parents, right? And we'll continue on with this. We have just a few minutes left, but I grew up with that, and my mom was always kind of saying, well, I wouldn't have to do this if you weren't in my way, or she would say, you're doing this to yourself, as she was beating me, putting the blame on me, right? That's just wrong. It's so wrong to do. But that's a real form of it's an emotional and verbal attack, and along with a physical attack, it really does set in pretty hard. And especially if you just go through it for so many years, year after year, and nothing changes, it is very hard on a person. So we'll take a look at that. I'm thinking tomorrow, I'm doing another show tomorrow, 7 o'clock a.m. Same thing, child abuse prevention and human rights abuse prevention is up to us for a half an hour, 7 o'clock a.m. Mountain Standard Time. We've got about a minute left, and I'm the Canada Regional Director for Dream Catchers for Abused Children, and I'm so happy to stand with them, let me tell you. You can check their website out. I know they were having some technical difficulties there tonight, but it'll be up and running, and you can just keep checking it out. It's www.dreamcatchersforabusedchildren.com or .org. You can get there either way. And they have some great information on there regarding, what is child abuse, all the different kinds of child abuse. There's how to report child abuse. So important to know how to report child abuse. And also there's a PDF handbook that you can download for free, and it's called the Child Abuse Handbook, and it's written by best-selling author Donna Shear. She's also the president of Dream Catchers for Abused Children, and CEO and founder and author Sandra Dawn Potter. And these two moms on a mission, they wrote this child abuse handbook, and it's a free PDF download. And you should get your copy. I got mine. And there's some great information in there, and all kinds of resources and links, and there's just support there for everyone. And if you suspect child abuse, do the right thing. Make the phone call. Don't think, I'm going to break up a happy family, because children who are being abused are not in a happy family, and they're not happy. And you could save a child's life, let me tell you. If we don't make the call, we're basically just assigning that child to a life of pain and misery if they aren't killed by their caregivers or their parents. You have to make the phone call. It's the right thing to do. Yeah, because we don't know, and so we can't assume that if you suspect abuse, you must do the right thing. These kids these kids are counting on us to stand up for them, right? So important. So thanks so much for tuning in, everybody. And you're in my heart and you're in my prayers, and I just keep the hope alive. That's what I keep saying. Keep that hope alive. Keep reaching out, and just make sure you don't suffer in silence and don't suffer on your own. It's not right, and you deserve to have a good life. So just hang in there. You do count. You do matter, and you just take it easy and take care of yourselves. Okay. Bye bye, everybody.